This week, MV Augusta announced a brand new limited edition of their incredible 208 horsepower Brutale 1000RR Super Naked. Now, MV, in my opinion, make the most stunning naked bikes out there on the market at the moment, and so in this video, we'll go through all the details with the 8 key things that you need to know about it. This special run of bikes is built upon something already pretty special, with the Brutale 1000RR being one of the most exquisitely designed motorcycles I've ever had the pleasure of riding. This thing is covered in beautifully contoured components, from the spectacular tail section to the single-sided swing arm, the quadruple exit exhaust system, and the carbon bodywork and winglets. But it's also extremely well spec'd from a technical perspective too, built around their 998cc inline 4 that makes a massive 208 horsepower up at 13,000 RPM, rising to 212 horsepower at 13,600 with the optional racing kit fitted. Now, admittedly, a lot of the fun is right at the top end on this bike. Peak torque is made at 11,000 RPM, so really to get the most out of it, you've got to keep it spinning, but if you're riding at just road speeds anyway, there's still enough mid-range to keep things plenty entertaining. Plus, the soundtrack is excellent too, with lots of bark and snarl and pops and crackles. Now, elsewhere with the chassis, everything is absolutely top spec, so brakes are from Brembo with their Stylema radially mounted monoblock calipers, and suspension comes from Öhlins with an NIX fork and a TTX shock, both of which are electronically adjustable. And then there's the rest of the electronics with all the modes and rider aids you could ever need. There's wheelie control and launch control and their Bluetooth connectivity system. And so, like I say, it is a very special bike in a special looking visual design that really does stand out from the crowd. And of course, the only real downside is the price, which starts at £32,000. I think it's fair to say that puts it well out of reach for 99.9% of bikers, but it's not really built to be a bike for the masses. It's purely an exclusive piece of exotica. But this new Assen edition takes things a step still further with a limited release that features, amongst other things, a distinctive new blue and silver paint job. Now, MV say that this is specifically to celebrate their 35 victories at the legendary circuit of Assen, which makes them the most successful Italian manufacturer and third overall in terms of successes at the extraordinary Dutch track. Just 300 will be made at their factory in Italy, of which there's a factory tour on the channel that we shot last year, and it really is an incredible place, and they really did give us full access to see the entire build process, and so I'll play out some of my favorite bits of the tour at the end of this video. Now, this bike is specifically finished in blue Nordico, Argento Agate Silver, and gold, and MV say it's both elegant and sporty, perfectly highlighting the motorcycle's significant attention to detail and first-rate technical equipment. Certainly looks pretty good to me, and I do like some of the little details like the gold sort of pinstripe and the Assen circuit layout and GP badges on the sides there. This bike was produced in official partnership with the circuit, much like the Nürburgring edition last year, thus allowing them to use the badging and logos on the bike there. Now, there's also a bit of a difference to the finish on the chassis, so the side plates on the frame and the swing arm are both finished in silver as opposed to the black on the standard RR. Naturally, this ties the hardware in better with the silver sections of paintwork, but perhaps the biggest upgrade on this bike would be the wheels with a carbon construction from MOTOBOB. These look absolutely spectacular to me with such thin spokes that it's quite hard to believe they're actually carbon, and I also think that semi-transparent blue finish really does add to the look as well. But of course, more importantly than that, weight shed at the wheel can have such a dramatic effect on how the bike rides and handles, because it's not only less rotating mass, which contributes to faster acceleration and deceleration as well as faster changes in direction, but it also means less unsprung mass, which allows the suspension to more easily do its job, which typically leads to better ride quality. And so yes, while they do help with the looks and image of the bike, they should also help with performance. Now, naturally, with an MV special edition, there's plenty of carbon on the rest of the bike, so you've got carbon exhaust heat shields, loads of carbon on the headlight surrounds, and also you've got carbon on the fuel tank side panels there. So in total, this bike is 3 kilograms lighter than the standard Brutale 1000RR, and that makes it 183 kilograms dry, or 180 with the special parts kit, and that's as opposed to the 186 without the kit of the standard bike. On top of that, you've got a specific seat made for this bike, and that comes in top-end Alcantara leather with a pop-in blue color that matches the rest of the bike. The seat area on the Brutale 1000RR is one of my favorite parts of the whole design, and this one is absolutely no different. Now, if you want to take this already unbelievable bike up to another level, then there is the special parts kit, and of course that features some extra fancy goodies. So there's a race exhaust system from Arrow with a dedicated ECU, and that gives you that 4 horsepower boost in power that I mentioned earlier, but also some CNC machined brake and clutch levers, a carbon fiber seat cowl for that more racy single seat look, a special fuel cap, a specifically branded Brutale Assen edition motorcycle cover, and a certificate of authenticity. Now, there's no price that I can gather as of yet, but given the standard bike is £32,000, this one is obviously going to be a few grand above that. Fair to say that's quite a lot of money, but as always, I'd love to know what you think of it down in the comments below, so do let me know. And if you haven't already seen the factory tour that I mentioned earlier, then here are a few of my favorite bits for you to enjoy. So some of the initial assembly is done here. So we've got some fuel tanks. I think those are from the Brutale 1000RR, and they'll have their fuel pumps fitted and then go onto a rig here where they get tested for leaks and all that kind of thing. We've also got lots of headlights here. You'll recognize these if you've seen a Brutale 1000RR, and we know they're for that bike because here you've got a code. So B for Brutale, 4 for 4-cylinder, so the 1000cc variant, and then RR. Right over the back here as well, there's some Öhlins forks that are coming in to be assembled. So up here we've got them in their lower triple clamps, and then the bearings are pressed on as well and greased there. So it just makes some of the assembly further down the line a little easier. There's a guy over here with one of those little pipe cleaner type brushes going through all of the little nooks and crannies and making sure there's no residual little bits of metal left from the machining process. And then the cylinder heads and engine casings go through this cleaning machine at the back there, so everything's ready to go in the next room. One thing that was interesting that they were saying here is that each torque wrench is connected to a computer system, and every single bolt for that engine number will go up to the server so that they know that it's torqued correctly. Essentially, that's part of their QC system. Obviously, when the engine then goes into a bike, you've got the engine number against the bike's number, the VIN, and so you can look up the torque settings and quality control for every single bike effectively. Here we've got someone fitting a fuel tank as well. You can see actually, look at that, how the fuel, you can have a little look at that, how the fuel tank sort of extends under the seat there, that gives it a bit more capacity, I guess, Tim. It's almost like you want to try and guess the bike when you're coming along here, because it really doesn't look like a Super Veloce in that form. And of course it shares the fuel tank with the F3 as well, so it could be either almost. A nice bit of peaceful calm in here because they call this the dressing room, so it's a little bit quieter. And this is where a lot of the final finishing parts and some of the bodywork goes onto the bike. The idea being that you don't want some of that beautiful carbon and deep, lustrous paint getting scuffed up while it's being assembled, so it makes sense to do that at the very end. And then once this bodywork's gone on, it goes into this really cool light tunnel where they can check the paint for little scuffs and marks. So let's have a look. Super Veloce screens, that seems to be one of the main bikes being built here today. And also the little brown pillion seat there that matches the ones we just saw. And then here we are in my favorite of all of the rooms in the factory. This is final control, they call it. So here you have the tunnel that I was talking about that gives you a really nice even light all over the bike, and you can check it over for any sort of aesthetic imperfections.